Okay, let's dive in. We're talking about something pretty powerful today, this invisible infrastructure that's basically on every road you drive.
Yeah.
Hugely popular with, you know, powerful groups, but also really controversial. We're talking about automatic license plate readers,
Yeah.
ALPRs,
Yeah.
sort of the ultimate shiny new tool, right? But it brings up this tension, high-tech help versus, well, massive surveillance fears.
Yeah, and what's really striking is just how fast they've spread and how much they do now. ALPRs aren't just simple cameras anymore. They're like these high-tech eyes for modern surveillance. They're really becoming this full-scale surveillance machine. So our mission really is to unpack this system. Look at how efficient it is, sure, for law enforcement, but then weigh that against the privacy cost. Because the accuracy is almost perfect and it's always running.
And the sheer scale is, it's kind of hard to grasp. We're talking systems scanning hundreds of thousands of plates. Every hour, it creates this enormous data stream, and yeah, it's kicking up a storm of controversy everywhere they're used. So let's get down to basics. What exactly are these machines grabbing, besides just the license plate number itself?
Oh, it's a lot more. It's an expansive capture. It's not just reading the letters and numbers. It snaps a full photo of the vehicle, plus the date, the time, and this is crucial, the exact GPS coordinates of the camera when it took the picture. So every plate read is like a digital pin on a map tied to a specific moment.
Right, that's the key. It's not just identifying your car, it's tracking your movements, your groove from point A to B. Giving law enforcement, or, well, whoever gets that data, a really detailed history of where you've been.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just the police using this tech.
Absolutely not. That's a common misconception. Police, highway patrols, sure, they're big users. But they often share this whole data ecosystem with private companies. These groups are digging through this data constantly. We're talking bounty hunters, repo men, and, maybe surprisingly, the auto industry itself.
Auto industry, why are they plugged into this?
Well, it boils down to managing assets, and debt recovery. For a repo guy, think about it. Real-time location data, that's a game changer. Instead of spending weeks hunting for a car with missed payments, they can get an instant ping the moment it drives past a reader, cuts costs massively. And for the auto industry, linking finance deals to that kind of location tracking, it reduces their risk, speeds up recovery. It's incredibly valuable data for them. They're like modern prospectors mining location data instead of gold.
And you see the cameras everywhere if you look, mounted high up on poles, sometimes tucked away on overpasses, or even driving right beside you, built into police cars pretty discreetly.
Yeah.
And they're constantly checking plates against databases for all sorts of things, right? Stolen cars, obviously, but even minor stuff like expired insurance.
Exactly. And that constant checking explains why law enforcement is, well, so hooked on them. You really have to compare it to how things used to be done. Think way back. A cop on patrol literally just spotting plates with their eyes, maybe checking against a paper hot list, or radioing dispatch, which was slow. It was just incredibly inefficient. What used to take an entire shift checking maybe 100 cars, tops ALPRs do in seconds. That massive jump in efficiency. That's why agencies see them as indispensable now.
Okay, so let's shift to that central conflict, the privacy versus utility thing. We have to acknowledge the good side first, right? ALPRs are genuinely useful for catching criminals, no doubt. Finding stolen cars, helping manage traffic jams. They really can be like Sherlock Holmes for the streets sometimes, giving vital leads.
Oh, the investigative utility is undeniable, absolutely. But this is where the surveillance cost immediately jumps out, because when you take all those single location points, those snapshots, and you gather them over weeks or months or even years, ALPRs stop being just a tool for finding a specific wanted car. They become a system for building these incredibly detailed profiles of, well, pretty much every driver out there.
Yeah, it turns your car into this breadcrumb trail of your life.
Yeah.
They can piece together your entire journey, like you said, like a detective on a cold case, where you go to the doctor who you visit regularly, maybe even what protests or meetings you attend. And the data doesn't just disappear. It's often stored for a long time, potentially forever.
And that permanence, that storage, leads right to the big problem, the gap in regulations. You mentioned a key court case earlier. Back in 2012, the Supreme Court, in U.S. v. Jones, they ruled police needed a warrant judge's approval to stick a GPS tracker on someone's car for long-term monitoring. That was seen as a really important check on government surveillance power.
Okay, but these plate scanners seem to just dodge those rules.
Yeah.
What's the loophole?
The loophole is all about how the data is classified. It's a bit subtle. The court said placing a private tracker on a car is a search, needs a warrant. But ALPRs, They're collecting data that's already visible.
Yeah.
In public, on public roads. Legally, anyone standing on the sidewalk can see your license plate, right? So the argument goes, the government is just using technology to look faster, more efficiently at what's already public. They kind of slide under the Fourth Amendment radar because each individual scan is considered public information. The courts haven't really grappled yet with the question of when gathering thousands of those public data points becomes something different, something that amounts to a private record of your life needing that judicial check.
Right. And that lack of judicial sign-off, tracking a car multiple times every single day with hardly any checks, that's what's really fueling the backlash. Groups like the ACLU, other rights organizations, they're essentially roaring against what they see as just indiscriminate snooping. Their big worry is it turns our streets into this kind of digital fishbowl where everyone's constantly watched.
Exactly. And you can see why they're worried when you look at past attempts to centralize this data. There was a pretty big push a few years back by the Department of Homeland Security. They wanted to gather all this ALPR data collected by private companies and local police and put it into one massive searchable federal database, a monster database, as some called it.
Wait, so the data's already out there, being collected in different groups. How did the public stop a big federal push like that? You'd think it would be hard.
It was the visibility, the idea of making that centralization official, putting it all in one federal pot. That sparked a really loud, fierce public reaction, huge privacy concerns. And that backlash was strong enough to basically stall the whole project. It showed that even if people sort of accept the individual scans as public, the idea of the federal government holding a searchable national history of everyone's movements, that crosses a line for a lot of folks.
Okay, so we've got immense power used across police and private sectors and very little court oversight, which makes the call for accountability for rules absolutely critical. What specific regulations are people demanding?
Well, the critics are basically screaming for regulations now. They're worried that tech is just running away from the law,
Right.
that it'll, strip away privacy completely if we don't act soon. The demands really center on transparency and putting strict limits in place.
And what's telling is that even law enforcement leaders, the brass, they often admit they need clear rules. They know they need public trust, and just hoarding data without rules is a huge potential problem for them too.
Absolutely. So the needed regulations tend to fall into a few key buckets. First, clear rules on retention limits. How long can data on innocent people be kept? A day? A month? Forever needs to be defined. Second, rules specifying who gets access to the data and why. Under what conditions, like probable cause, limiting fishing expeditions. And third, really strict controls on sharing data between private firms and government agencies, and between different agencies, too.
And auditing. You absolutely need audits, right? Without some way to check, to keep them honest, the system's just asking for misuse. We need to make sure it's being used to catch actual criminals, not just track ordinary people going about their lives, like carpoolers. Audits help ensure they stick to the rules and prevent that sort of mission creep, especially when data is flowing everywhere.
Yeah, and the need for rules is just getting more urgent because of the economics. ALPR tech keeps getting cheaper. Even small-town police forces can afford it now. Plus, there's federal money available, often linked to things like counterterrorism efforts, which just fuels the rollout of this network onto basically every highway and byway. So the question isn't if this tech will be widespread. It already is. The question is how we decide to govern it.
Okay, so let's bring it all together. We've got this incredibly powerful tech, almost perfectly accurate, used by police, debt collectors, private industry, all operating with very little judicial oversight because of this loophole around public data.
Yeah.
Your car, right now, is essentially creating this detailed history book available to whoever has access to that database.
Which brings us to the big question, really, for you listening. If this digital dragnet just becomes the normal way of things, the data's cheap, it lasts forever. Are we okay living in a world where the government, or maybe a private company, can just instantly pull up your entire travel history?
And maybe one last thing for you to think about. We talked about efficiency, data standards. The cameras are getting smaller, cheaper all the time. Now imagine if this ALPR data gets successfully combined, cross-referenced with other emerging tech, like really advanced facial recognition from street cameras or drone surveillance. What does that next generation, that fully converged digital dragnet, actually look like? Because while you've been listening right now, thousands more plates have been scanned, logged, stored, just waiting. Something to mull over next time you hit the road.